You know who else's career got a big boost out of that movie? Huey Lewis. The Power of Love and Back in Time. Those songs were on the radio forever. Anyhow, there were two sequels, one in 1989, one in 1990, and I didn't see them. Anybody see them? Why aren't we showing all three of them tonight? Remember when we did that with the Poltergeist movie, showed all three right in a row? There's still people in intensive care units as a result of that night. Okay, I want to let you know I already got the cooler pack for next week because we're showing Look Who's Talking 2. The one with Roseanne as the voice of the baby sister, one of the only zero-star flicks in the Monstervision repertoire. And we'll follow that up with Highlander, where Sean Connery teaches Christopher Lambert how to sword fight his way through immortality. That one also has Roseanne as the voice of the Rosetta Stone. I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and it's time for Maximum Overdrive, considered by most critics to be the worst Stephen King movie ever made. I don't want to hurt Steve's feelings. You know, I know he tunes in now and then. Steve, if you're watching, I personally think the movie does have its moments. And it's about these machines that start taking over the world, like automatic bank machines that use the F word when you try to get your money out. And only the last survivors on Earth end up at Pat Hingle's truck stop watching the 18-wheelers drive around and around all by their lonesome. And we got some excellent splatter effects in this one. We got a little kid on his bike getting Aunt Jemima'd by a steamroller. We got a leaping electric carving knife and various forms of deranged lawn care equipment. And I want you to concentrate on this very first scene. What incredibly famous person is seen screaming in the front seat of her car while the car is destroyed by flying watermelons? Let's do those drive-in totals and start the movie before you forget to check on that. We have 20 dead bodies, 1 possible breast, 1 dead dog, 28 dead motor vehicles, 6 quarts of blood, the only drive-in movie in the history of the world to have all its music performed by AC/DC, 12 exploding trucks, 1 exploding ice cream truck, 2 motor vehicle chases, wrist carving, random video game electrocutions, little leaguers massacred for no reason, steamrolling of small children, ventilated Pat Hingle, filthy restrooms, gratuitous version of King of the Road, vending foo, diesel foo, garbage truck foo, bazooka foo, 2.5 stars, Maximum Overdrive. Check it out. I'll be here all night to help you out with it. Go. I hope Valvoline knows what they got into when they sponsored this one. They'll have a very fine-tuned demographic by the time it's over, though. Let's see, it'll be 1 bored hospital security guard, you know, a gal who wants to have Emilio Estevez's baby, and a bunch of guys in prison. That's basically it. They use a lot of motor oil, though. You know, no matter how many times I make fun of Maximum Overdrive, Big Steve still speaks to me. You know, he invited me to his big 25th anniversary party celebrating the publication of Carrie after 25 years. Steve, you're a bigger man than I, but that's what happens in middle age. You know, you get a little mellow. And also, Steve, you could really lose 10, 20 pounds, goddamn. Won't be any more invitations, will there? Did you see her? It was Marla Maples being bombarded by flying watermelons in her famous role as woman number 2 in Maximum Overdrive. Remember when she first started dating the Donald? Or whatever you call it they were doing. I guess it's not dating if the guy's married to somebody else. But anyway, when they first started rooting around, the newspapers would report on her as a mysterious actress. Now we have evidence that she had indeed emoted on film, and a dang fine job she did, too. Okay, let's keep on with it, because it doesn't start to drag for another couple commercials, so roll it. How much do you think Marla got in that divorce? It wasn't that much. It wasn't as much as you think. It was in like the low 8 figures. And she didn't really need that money because she's got one of those Kmart clothing lines, right? Very lucrative, those things. Or is it acid wash jeans? No, that was Donna Rice. Acid wash jeans. I always thought that's nasty. Acid wash jeans. Thank the Motion Picture Academy for loaning us the actual hand and carving knife that was used in Maximum Overdrive. They got it as soon as filming was wrapped in Wilmington. They took it right to the archives. Pinkerton detectives are standing by here to take it back as soon as the show is over. But I appreciate having that here on the set. Well, we got a whole lot of subplots going on here. We got the redneck truck stop owner, played by Pat Hingle. We got Emilio Estevez wandering around aimlessly. We got the honeymooning couple careening around the countryside. That's Yeardley Smith, by the way, as the bride, the one who says, "Curtis, are you dead?" She's best known today as the voice of Lisa Simpson on The Simpsons. But in 1986, she just starred on Broadway in The Real Thing, directed by Mike Nichols. And let's see what else. Oh, we got the waitress who gets cut by the runaway electric carving knife, as I said. We've got the Yahoo gas station attendant who gets a face full of gasoline right square in the eyes. We've got the little kid riding around on his bike, and we got a bunch of 18-wheelers that are supposed to be terrifying, but mostly they're just kind of lame. So what I'm wondering is why Emilio Estevez did this movie. Because the guy's 23 years old, and his list of films goes like this. He made Tex, The Outsiders, The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, That Was Then, This Is Now, which was made from his own screenplay, by the way, and then Maximum Overdrive. And while he was making Maximum Overdrive, he was already getting ready to write, direct, and star in Wisdom. So we're talking one of the hottest actors in the world at this point, and he's doing dialogue with motor vehicles. So there's a little bit of a possibility of some actual drama here between Emilio and Laura Harrington, the pretty hitchhiker. She was known at this point for working with Al Pacino on Broadway, where when he did Richard III, and for starring in a little independent movie called City Girl. So let's see how this develops. Roll the film. Emilio Estevez, he's the nephew, I've said this before, but I love to talk about this. He's the nephew of Joe Estevez, who is the obscure black sheep B-movie Estevez. But Emilio Estevez's father is Martin Sheen, whose real name is Estevez, but he changed it. And Emilio Estevez's little brother is Charlie Sheen, who took his father's name just to be different and confusing from the other Estevez's, only now he goes by Charles Sheen. You know who else did that? Debbie Gibson now goes by Deborah Gibson. Like we're not going to recognize them or something, you know? Of course, I admit when I start doing more serious things myself, I plan on using my given name too, my real name. You know, it's Joseph Bob Briggs. See, it always bothered my daddy that I didn't use my formal name because I was named after him. He was Robert Bob Briggs. Oh, honey, you're bleeding like a stuck pig. Only one of the many great lines for Yeardley Smith in this movie. That obnoxious voice she has is very funny. But as the Mack trucks go on the rampage at the Dixie Boy truck stop, wasting everything in sight, this might be a good time to welcome the lovely TNT mail girl, Rusty, who's here once again with letters from our captive audience in the fine penal institutions of America in what we call Joe Bob's Jailbreak. You know, Yeardley Smith is the voice of Lisa Simpson. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've never actually seen The Simpsons.
Really? Never seen The Simpsons?
I'm kind of busy on Sunday nights.
Sunday nights? Every Sunday for 10 years? You're busy?
Well, let's just say I have a class.
What do you mean, let's say I have a class? Do you have a class? Or don't you have a class?
Well, it is with a professor, and I do learn a lot.
Am I the only person who has never had a date with you?
No, but I did go through a period where I was very popular.
Uh-huh. Well, I wish you were that popular with me, so...
Here's a letter. It's from Bubba Hopkins at the South Dakota State Penitentiary in Sioux Falls.
All right. Yo, Joe Bob. You are a big hit here at the South Dakota State Penitentiary. But considering our chow hall's board of fare, anything is an improvement. You know how they compliment you, then they get you, you know? Nowhere else can you find the cheesiest films but on your show. As a self-styled connoisseur of cheese flicks, I must say you offer some of the most enjoyable turkeys around, but I believe I have found one that you seem to have overlooked, a revolting little gem of a film that after I rented it for the guy's viewing pleasure, I received death threats if I ever got it again. This will clue you in on its ability to entertain. This masterpiece of cinematography, and I use that term loosely, is an Oriental offering entitled Samurai Reincarnation. This baby is great. 4 hours long, excruciatingly bad subtitles, and not a plot to be found anywhere. Only recommended for the hardest of hardcore drive-in movie buffs. It has been known to transform hard-bitten convicts into shambles. 4 stars, Joe Bob. Bubba says check it out. And by the way, there's another film I rented called Dr. Jekyll's Dungeon of Death. This is just fantastic because they seem to have done this whole movie on a budget of about $20, and most of that went for beer. You might want to show that one on your show sometime. In fact, you could show them both for a double dip. There's enough cheese in these 2 films that all you need is the dried hunks of bread and you'd have fondue. Finally, I'd appreciate it if you'd send an autographed picture. I'll put it right next to my Montana is for Lovers poster with the smiling rancher and the terrified sheep. Buenos nachos the Reverend Bubba Hopkins, pastor, Jailhouse Rock Congregation, First Presbyterian Church of Elvis the Divine, South Dakota State Penitentiary, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. P.S. My cellmate Kevin says, howdy, P.P.S. need more Godzilla flicks. How can a guy in the joint find movies that I can't even find? But I appreciate the support, Bubba, and I'll look out for those titles. I might have to go up to South Dakota and check out your Sunday service, you know. Do the Presbyterians have confession? Because if they do, there must be quite a line for the booths at this congregation here. South Dakota State Penitentiary is the oldest prison in South Dakota. It opened in December 12th, 1882. 2,400 inmates, about a tenth of them are women, which may account for, we found this picture of it, the fancy French Rococo fountain with the plaster swans out front of the prison. I don't know where we got this picture, but interesting touch for a maximum security penitentiary. Okay, Bubba, free your minds and your butts will follow. And Rusty, this professor of yours, what does he teach?
Oh, poetry.
Oh, brother.
Oh, what? You should try it sometime. Girls love poetry.
Well, listen, you don't have 4 ex-wives and not hear that 300 times, so I know that.
You don't want to take my advice? Don't take my advice.
Wait a minute, you mean try it with you? Try that with you? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
You know, I thought you only had 3 ex-wives.
Oh, yeah, I was counting one of the ones I lived with. She was like an ex-wife.
Oh, everything about you is just so romantic.
Rusty, all right, but I could do this. Shall I compare thee to a perfect potential future ex-wife? The 4th time with thee, wouldst be a charm with me. We're about an hour into it now, and it just flat dropped its transmission. You know why? Because Stephen King tried to direct a love scene. Because think about it. Everything was fine up to that point, right? I mean, you got the machines taking over the world. We got the bank sign flashing the F word, which you did not see on TNT because we can't show the F word on TNT. We got the drawbridge scene where 10, 15 motor vehicles get destroyed. We got the maniac cigarette machine, the attack diesel pump, the leaping electric carving knife, Coke can brain surgery. We've got exploding 18-wheeler aliens. We've got Pat Hingle running around shooting off a bazooka that he happens to keep in his basement. And then what happens? Emilio Estevez and Laura Harrington do this pathetic little kissing scene, and then they start making the sign of the 4-legged spouting walrus. And you know what that adds up to? A Perry Como music video, right? See, Steve knew this going in, because Dino De Laurentiis, he asked him to direct one of his movies for 2 reasons. One, Steve had always been upset that most of the screen versions of his books turned out wrong. He didn't even like The Shining, and everybody likes The Shining. Plus, at this time, his movies had such a bad reputation in the industry that when Misery came out, for example, the studio tried to disguise the fact that it was written by Stephen King. Dino De Laurentiis had produced 4 Stephen King films, none of which did very well. He made The Dead Zone, Firestarter, Cat's Eye, and Silver Bullet. So Dino thought that he'd get a better result if Steve did the directing himself, and Steve said, okay, but the story he wanted to direct was Trucks, one of the earliest stories he ever wrote back when he was a nobody living in a rented trailer somewhere in Maine. And the reason was that he felt comfortable dealing with machines and explosions and that kind of stuff, but he had a mortal fear of having to talk to actors about the method and motivation and stuff like that. And so he just let the actors kind of wander around, and he spent all his time directing the trucks and the machines, and that's how Maximum Overdrive ended up sucking. Even Steve admits it, but the flick does have its moments, so let's continue with it now. Go. And you know what we didn't see? I just realized it, because we didn't see Stephen King's own cameo in the film, where he goes to the automatic teller machine, and he tries to get cash, and the machine says, you're an... I can't say what the machine says, but 7 letters rhymes with lasso. But this movie had so much cussing in it that half of it was gone by the time they butchered it down for cable. And actually, you know what that makes me think? Maybe Steve's original version, before it got censored, is a really good movie. Maybe not. It's a road twitch. Is that what she said at the end of that last scene? Just a little lesson in manners from the road twitch. I'm sure that's what she said. Might be more of the TNT censors monkeying around with the dialogue, right? Because this movie originally got an X rating for excessive gore and for bad language. Stephen King's original idea was to make it raw and vulgar and hard driving, which is why he chose AC/DC for the soundtrack. But most of his great splatter effects had to come out. Like, remember the scene at the beginning where the steamroller goes wild on the Little League field? Well, one day they were setting up the shot where the steamroller mows down one of those Little Leaguers, and they had a dummy all set up to be flattened. And at the last minute, Steve said to the special effects guy, "Give me one of those blood bags." And they went over and they put a blood bag on the body. And he was hoping that after the steamroller finished running over the body, there'd be this great dramatic streak of blood on the equipment. But what it did instead is that it made it look like the kid's head exploded. So Steve was so happy with the footage that he called up his friend George Romero, director of Night of the Living Dead, and he sent him a video of the footage. And George Romero himself got sick watching that footage. He had to look away. So Steve was very proud of himself. But the MPAA ratings board was not impressed. They told him to take that out, along with a couple of other gore effects, and tone the whole thing down, or else he didn't have a chance of getting an R rating. So all the good stuff had to come out. I think I should be on the ratings board. Then we'd get some decent movies made.
Yeah, really.
Okay, I'll shut up now because I know you're dying to get back to the story. All three of you. Okay, roll it. AC/DC, musically official band of the San Diego Padres, right? And Butthead. Or Beavis. It said Beavis. Only Beavis wears the AC/DC t-shirt. Who wears the AC/DC t-shirt, Beavis or Butthead? Beavis? Okay, that show's only been off the air for about a year now. I say Beavis. You know, if you were in a bar in Atlantic City and everybody was really, really drunk and you pretended not to know the answer to that question, you could make a big pile of money. Why is Emilio Estevez limping? And what did he just mumble about a broom? He's wasted from pumping too much gas, you know, operating too many nozzles. You know, just when you think this unbelievable movie reaches a new level of unbelievability, it tops itself or bottoms itself, because the machine gun turret that holds everybody hostage and talks to the truck stop in Morse code, I would say that's pretty much as far as you can go with this concept, wouldn't you? Fortunately, it's almost over. What's amazing to me is that Stephen King could have chosen any story of all the hundreds that he's written to be his first directing effort. He chooses this weird one that he sold for $250 back in the early 70s. Wouldn't you think he'd have a great one tucked away just for this moment instead of giving it to Rob Reiner? You know, here, Rob, make another $50 million. Okay, now for the stunning conclusion to Maximum Overdrive. Wait, I believe it's time. Yes, it is. It's time for Emilio Estevez to explain the whole plot of the movie in his big speech that begins with the line, "Okay, imagine you're a race of aliens," right? You don't believe me. You don't. Watch.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Maximum Overdrive on TNT.
Okay, let me get this straight. The whole secret of survival was jump onto a sailboat. And everybody cheers, even though Brad just got flattened like a pancake by a grinning 18-wheeler full of toys, you know? If all they had to do was run into the woods and jump on a boat, why didn't they do it in the first 20 minutes of the movie and save us a whole lot of bad dialogue? Like, "You can't do this, we made you." Wanda June, the waitress, in her big emotional scene. All right, I must have been a really bad boy recently, because next week I've been saddled with Look Who's Talking To Again, followed by the Christopher Lambert sword-fighting cult favorite, Highlander. I'm Joe Bob Briggs, reminding you that when the chips are down, the buffalo is empty. Did you guys hear the one about the blonde who's trying to sell her old car? And she's having a lot of difficulty selling it because the car has 250,000 miles on it. So one day she tells her problem to a Newfoundlander that she works with at a salon. Now, that's right, I said a Newfoundlander. You're about to hear what may be the world's only Newfoundlander joke, and actually for you aficionados of joke telling, it's a Newfoundlander joke contained within a blonde joke. So the Newfoundlander tells her, there is a way to make the car easier to sell, but it's not legal. The blonde says, that doesn't matter if I can sell the car. So the Newfoundlander says, okay, here's the address of a friend of mine. He owns a car repair shop, so tell him I sent you and he'll turn the counter in your car back to 50,000 miles. Then you shouldn't have a problem selling the car. So the next weekend, the blonde makes a trip to the mechanic. About a month after that, the Newfoundlander asked her if she sold her car. The blonde says, why should I? It only has 50,000 miles on it. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. Blonde calls the police to report that thieves have been in her car. She tells them they stole the dashboard, they stole the steering wheel, they stole the brake pedal, they even stole the accelerator. But before the police can start investigating the case, the phone rings again, and it's the blonde. She tells the police, "Never mind, I got in the back seat by mistake."